This show is brought to you by SafetyFM.
And from the border of liberty and prosperity, we're coming on a little bit early today. I had a lot of questions and comments and everything else on this whole thing with hard hats last night. So I thought it was worth having a separate episode on this and share it with my customers, clients, and you too could share it with your customers and clients. So what prompted most of this? No, we have this, especially the construction industry, we have a lot of controversy associated with hard hats. And one of the, it's a valid OSHA citation most of the time when they issue a hard hat violation, overwhelming amount of times. And OSHA's been really doing stuff with issuing stuff with PPE and things of that nature over the last couple of years. It's one of their top rated things, but it's usually face shield and safety glasses, which we'll talk about further in another episode. Now, hard hat. This one actually might be a game changer on this. I think we're going to have to watch this to see if there is a change in the OSHA technical manual and other policies once, this thing all comes about here and, OSHA slowly implements among their own people. There are certain recommendations that they issue here for head protection. And I'm just wondering if this is ever going to make it into enforcement, or is this going to just stay an internal policy? So yesterday, let's stop that. We had our regular episode. We have our OSHA news releases, December 2023, and we review these. These are all open source and everything else. Let me share this because we're going to be sharing a lot of this stuff here. And okay, so right here, and let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, let's see, make sure everybody's seeing that. Yes. So OSHA announces a switch from traditional hard hats to safety helmets to protect safety agency employees from head injuries better. And here's the release here. OSHA announces, this is yesterday, December 11th, OSHA announced a switch from traditional hard hats to safety helmets to protect agency employees from head injuries better. I might have chosen a little bit, right? Better title here. It's a little bit wordy, but anyway. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration announced that the agency is replacing traditional hard hats used by its employees with more modern safety helmets to protect them better when they are on the jobs. Now, there's some key data in here that if you're a safety professional or anyone responsible for safety, you have to take a look at here. In 2020, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports head injuries accounted for nearly 6% of non-fatal occupational injuries involving days away from work. Almost half of those injuries occurred when workers came into contact with an object or equipment, while about 20% were caused by slips, trips, and falls. Now, we were recently cleaning out my mom's house, and we came across this. This is probably, and I don't have a date on here, pardon me, I hit the mic. Probably from this is after 1945, roughly. Probably right after World War II. This was from the previous owner of the house, Irving Hutt and Mildred Hutt. Right, their children. A little bit of a trivia here. Were exhibits on Coney Island for the first incubator. So you can look it up on the history book in the history books. But anyway, metal hard hat is what we're looking at. We still had some of the internal structure which cushions the head, right? And then we go on to our modern hard hats. So I know, hey, Jim, that's all full of stickers. There's something a bad example. Okay, great. But here we have, often way that jobs work is that you have to have stickers on the hard hat to verify you're supposed to be there for security as well as training purposes, right? And now they come in all different types of styles. My company, my firm, prefers the red ones on that. So what OSHA is suggesting is that everybody go and their thing, and this is a little bit of an older model. There are better models out there now. I shouldn't say better. I should say more advanced here. Hopefully we'll be covering some of that in the future. And this is what they're requiring, is this for the chin strap. All right. Now, the difference is this in price. For this, a traditional hard hat, you get on that website that's named after the river in South America. You could go out there and get a hard hat anywhere from $10 up to $150. The helmets are running in at the upper 90s, upper lower hundreds usually. You may be able to get a better price on them with this. So what they're requiring is a helmet style with this. And I've been wearing this one for about 4 years now whenever I'm working at height or in the maritime environment because chin strap. Now, something to point out here, right? And we're going to go into letters of interpretation in a minute here. And they're actually really critical here with this. So what does OSHA say, at least officially, in the regulations? We have 1926 100, which is the construction industry standard here. Employees working in areas where there is possibility of danger to head injury from impact or from falling or flying objects or from electrical shocks and burns shall be protected by protective helmets. And it goes on and on and on and on with this. And this is an important one, too, because some of these helmets do not have an ANSI standard. They have a European standard that's in excess of the ANSI standard. But OSHA will deem any head protection device that the employer demonstrates is at least as effective as a head protection device, constructed in accordance with one of the consensus standards identified in B1 of this section to be in compliance with the requirements of this section. So B1 is... Right, let's see. American National Standards Institute, 2009 standard, 2003 standard, 1997 standard, but there's since been a 2014 standard issued. So they're looking for ANSI. However, my understanding is that there's currently a letter of interpretation under review with the agency to talk about European standards. But, this would, the statement 1926 100B3 would be seen to take over for that and say, hey, we're using stuff well in excess of the ANSI standard, which my understanding, the European standard is much better. Now, here we have, is a 1926 501 standard, specifically on in the Fall Protection Standard, 1926 501C, protection from falling objects. When an employee is exposed to falling objects, the employer shall have each employee wear a hard hat. And, again, hard hats, like all PPE, are not an end-all and be-all. You have to have other things in there. So you have to go through that hierarchy of controls that we always talk about. Eliminate the hazard, and substitute, a less hazardous thing for a more hazardous thing for a less hazardous thing. I was mixed that up, how to say that, but you want to make things more safe. You want to have some type of engineering control, administrative control, and PPE as being the last. So just because you're wearing a hard hat does not mean that it's okay to do all different crazy stuff to put your head in the line of fire or to have overhead hazards. That's not what that says. And it has all the stuff: erect toe board screens and guardrails, erect the canopy structure, barricade the area as to which objects could fall. So some type of barricade. You can go and read the whole thing yourself. I'm not going to read it word for word. Now we have other regulations here that are with us. Here we have the 1910-135 regulation under general industry. The employer, and this basically says the same thing as 1926-62. I think almost word for word with that. So again, you have to have some type of an assessment done. Here we have in the maritime environment in shipyards, you have to wear a protective helmet when working in areas where there is a potential for injury to the head or fall from falling objects on here. And basically the same thing. Got to wear a hard hat. And here we have in the longshoring regulation here, same deal, hard hat. And going on here, and it keeps referencing ANSI Z89.1, and I'm not going to go into this in its entirety, but essentially you go to the ANSI.org website, you buy yourself a standard off of them, but basically you have two types of hard hats here rated for. Type 1 from the top, Type 2 from the side. Those are the two major types, and then you have different types within that also there. Now, what your company or your employer has to do is do an assessment and figure out what exactly they're going to need. So here we have, let me just read that. I have class type 1 from the top, type 2 from the side, right? Or off center, they call it. Then you have electrical classes. So you have class C for hard hats, electrical, that are rated for protection of up to 20,000 volts. Class G General with offer protection up to 2,200 volts. And Class C Conductive, and they give zero protection, right, for electrical conductors. And they include vented options and things of that nature. And so they have vents, probably going to be a Class C. But you need to figure out, and more importantly, get your procurement people on the same page on what's going to be appropriate and not appropriate for what they're doing. Now, this was what they referenced yesterday. Let me pull it up. This was from the 22nd of November. Let me share this. All right. So here we have, and let me make sure this is looking right here. All right. So head protection, safety helmets in the workplace. Safety and health information bulletin. Workplace safety equipment, including head protection, has evolved over the years. As industries strive to enhance workers' safety and reduce the risk of head injuries, more advanced and protective modern head protection, safety helmets are replacing traditional hard hats. The Safety and Health Information Bulletin in the SHIB, right? Safety and Health Information Bulletin presents the key differences between safety helmets and traditional hard hats, describing the advancements in design, materials, and protective features that help to protect the worker's entire head. The SHIB also provides instructions for properly inspecting and storing head protection, whether it be a safety helmet or a traditional hard hat. With a thorough understanding of the benefits and capabilities of head protection options, employers and workers to make informed decisions on which to use. Going through here, the significance of head protection in hazardous work environments cannot be overstated. And over here, they have a picture of the OSHA standard hard hat here. They don't give a name brand or anything. I wouldn't expect them to. For decades, traditional hard hats have been the go-to choice for protecting workers' head. Made of rigid materials like high-density polyethylene, traditional hard hats provide a basic level of protection. However, as technology and scientific understanding of head injuries have advanced, safety helmets now provide further improvements to enhance workers' safety and to reduce the risk of severe head trauma. One of the differences between traditional hard hats and safety helmets lies in their construction materials. While hard hats are made of hard plastics, safety helmets incorporate a combination of materials, including lightweight composites, fiberglass, and advanced thermoplastics. And lighter hard hat, easier stress on the head and the neck, and things of that nature. So determining when to use, so here we go, more statistics. Employers should evaluate workplace hazards to determine the most appropriate head protection for each situation. If head protection is needed for the job, employers should consider investing in better head protection with safety helmets to protect their workers. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2020, head injuries accounted for 5.8% of non-fatal occupational injuries involving days away from work. Determining when to use a safety helmet on the job. Employers must conduct a hazard assessment at their job sites and, based on the workplace hazards, determine whether head protection is necessary. When head protection is needed, employers should consider using safety helmets instead of traditional hard hats. Right? Right? Safety helmets instead of traditional hard hats so that employees are best protected against occupational head injuries. Recommended uses for hard hats. Right? I'm not going to read all of this. Construction sites, oil and gas injuries, industries, working from heights, electrical work, Class G and E helmets, high temperature work environments, specialized work environments, specific regulatory requirements, low risk environments. I'm hard pressed to say where this recommendation is not covered, right, on that. Basically everywhere. And then it goes into storing the hard hat and assessing it, things of that nature. That should all be in your 10-hour or 30-hour course. But, again, we do that. What's the main thing with a traditional hard hat that protects you is not only the shell, but the suspension system with that. Now, my question is this. What's your organization going to do? I'm going to share with you 2 letters of interpretations that I've had to whip out on a couple of jobs I've had. Some of them, we're not talking 30 years ago. We're talking in the last 2 years, specifically working with roofers that did not want to wear hard hats. And I hear every excuse in the world with that. Now, this is a letter so the roofing company whipped out this letter saying this. And believe it or not, I have to say, unless I actually saw this, I have a hard time, believing that this actually happened here with this, the way that it says. My employees are working on a 1-story roof. This is from 2004. With no construction being done overhead. Also, there is no equipment on the roof that poses risk of head injury. My roofers remove their hard hats once they're on the roof and place them back on before coming down. This is violation 1926-100. Let me point out, I get this story from every roofer, and every time I've seen this story, now the writer of this letter, that's maybe exactly what happens. I have no idea. But in my experience, this never happens. Doesn't happen at all. All right. They'll walk through all different types of overhead hazards and then say, well, we're roofers, we don't have to wear hard hats because OSHA says we don't have to wear hard hats. And then you break this out and says, who told you that? Did you read it for yourself? This is not confrontational. No, did you actually read this for yourself? No? Well, because if that's what you're being told, there's a chance that the person that you heard it from either didn't read it or is lying to you. Or is being, producing stuff that's not necessarily true with this. So it states a regulation we just went on, and it says, as OSHA previously stated in an August 23rd, 1983 letter to Congressman Sisiski, where employees are not exposed to possible head injuries, head protection is not required by OSHA standards. In your scenario, where no work is being performed overhead, there's no employee exposure to possible head injuries, there's no OSHA requirement that hard hats be worn on the roof. Okay? Keep that in mind. Right? And that's what, there are, right? Here we have another one. And this is from 2014, and they reference the first letter. According to OSHA's, and this is apparently a general industry type thing, is what they mention here, right? OSHA requires a hazard assessment to determine what's there. And what do you do after the hazard assessment? You have to apply what? Hierarchy of controls, which we just talked about. OSHA generally requires hard hats for employees working in areas where there is a possible danger of head injury from impact, falling, or flying objects, or electrical shock and burns. OSHA's general industry standard in head protection states, respectively, do not require workers wear hard hats where there is no risk of head injury, and it goes on and on and on. All right? And this specific letter was about heat stress, and OSHA, even back in 2014, recognized that there was no heat stress standard, and they included all different types of things going on there, right? For recommendations and saying, general duty clause, that sort of thing. This is what they, well, I'm drawing an inference, but it's what they're implying here on this. Now, in the light of the recent press release, this is why these trade releases and press releases are important. Here, I'm going to highlight this. Let me make sure we can see this online easy. Okay, let me zoom in here. Okay, that's better. Almost half of the injuries, right? In 2020, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports head injuries accounted for nearly 6% of non-fatal occupational injuries involving days away from work. Almost half of those injuries occurred when workers came into contact with an object or equipment, while 20% were caused by slips, trips, and falls. So I knew about this back in 2020 when this became an issue 3 years ago, because I've read these things. This even back then. Yes, I have a very exciting life here with this. I know I always get that comment. But what this comes down to is this. This says where there is no employee exposure to possible head injury in one letter interpretation. That was from 2004. In 2014, here, right, it references the 2004 letter on that, right, with OSHA generally requires hard hats for employees and everything else. So when there's a hazard to the head. So according to OSHA's own paperwork here, you can eliminate all the overhead hazards. But if there's still a slip, trip, and fall hazard on the job site, you still have to wear a hard hat. Now, I'm going to ask you this. What job site have you been on, especially if you're on a roof or in an open field or something like that, where there's, especially like yesterday and the day before in the northeastern United States, where we had gale force winds? We had Christmas ornaments all over the front yard here. What job site are you going to be in where you're not going to have a flying object or a slip, trip, and fall hazard? They're not going to exist. Right? And this was the argument I used with and I say argument, I mean, we're professional here. We don't scream and yell. This is what I mentioned to the roofer. Look, you're going to have some type of, you have to wear hard hats because of this, and this, what I just laid out to you. Now, my question is this. Now that they made this recommendation, right, and it goes through here, we'll zoom through this again here. Boom. And here you go. The agency recommends safety helmets be used by people working at the construction industry, the oil and gas industry, all this other stuff. What if you go, how's this going to work out in the technical manual here? They start citing people for head protection. Do we all now, was this like a back doorway of maybe getting a regulation through without regulatory review? I question. Bypassing the regulatory process. I don't think that they're devious like that. There are people who are devious like that, but I just have to wonder out loud. So what's the message for the people I work with? After I'm done with this video, we're going to be sending out a copy of this to all my customers saying, look, this is the policy, and you may want to consider it in writing all your plans, but my recommendations are going to be what OSHA's are, that everybody wear hard hats, wear the helmets rather than the hard hats. That's what it is. So for Safety Wars, I hope this was useful. Hopefully this will start a conversation in your organization here with this. Now, one thing that's, right, let's talk about this also. I didn't mention it. What if you're involved in a lawsuit with a head injury? You think they're going to break out this recommendation? I think so, right? And just something to think about. So I hope this was useful. I will be seeing you a little bit later on tonight's program. We're probably not going to be on Safety FM. I have a meeting, but we will release the program on the podcast and also on YouTube and all the other video streams. For Safety Wars, this is jimpoesl.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.